So welcome, Anandi. It's a pleasure to connect, and we chat quite a few times on live and through our digital platforms because we have both got a real passion when it comes to play. Obviously, yourself on dry land and in the water. And I have been really following your story and I've been loving your book, which we will mention a little bit later. But should we give some little introductions about your fantastic story and how you're helping your community?
Thanks so much, Jo. I'm so excited to be here, and I think we always just love talking about play. We can talk about it all day. But my name is Anande Ferreira. I'm a pediatric occupational therapist and play coach. So I'm certified in sensory integration therapy, but I have a special interest in playfulness, and I think that's really where our paths came together so beautifully. So I was traditionally based in private practice for nearly 10 years. And I think as that process went along and my research and masters and all of that came together, my true passion for empowering and I think enabling caregivers and families towards true play and playful engagement in today's fast-paced and changing world. I think that my heart just kept speaking, warmer and warmer towards that. I've branched out a little bit. So that's where the play coachings come in and kind of an online platform to support caregivers. And through that, the book kind of popped up with all the content that was there. So it's just been an absolute joy to share in the beauty of play and child development with caregivers all around. So thank you so much for having me, Jo.
Oh, you're welcome. And I think play is one of those topics that it's so broad, isn't it? And sometimes we don't understand all the true benefits, all the dynamics of play. And is it your sort of opinion that maybe as a society, we're just not valuing play as much as we used to when we were children?
Absolutely. I talk often about the societal distrust of play. And it's fascinating. There's a book written by Howard Chudikoff on how play has changed over the decades. And it is very interesting to look at it. And there's so many reasons. I mean, yes, screen time often comes up when you're reading things. But it's more than just that. We're really looking at, life has become very busy. We're seeing that I think competitive parenting has come in, a fear of the future. But I think unfortunately through that process, I think we're doing less of what we should be doing, not more of the right things. So I think it's about us reflecting on, yes, we want the best for future generations, but are we doing the best for them right now? And I think somewhere along the lines, and unfortunately marketing of all these products and I often think that there's a little bit of a subliminal messaging that comes in with, are you doing enough? With all these, I mean, even on in Facebook, I got a sponsored post last week for a reading program for 2 and 3-year-olds. And it gets me every time. And there is this, you're not doing enough, you should be doing enough. So I think that there's a lot of guilt and there's a lot of things that come into play. And it's taking us away from what's natural and what's important, and very much the book title Born to Play. And I'm hoping that as we have these discussions, we almost go back to, I think, what's important and what's right and what's natural and what builds the foundations for these scholastic skills, because we're seeing, and again, lots of different factors, but a lot of childhood anxiety, a lot of childhood diagnoses that are increasing every year. And I do think we need to stop and pause and go, what's changed? Yes, health professionals are more aware, and that's one side. But I do think, lifestyle-wise, what other things have been happening that we're seeing such an increase in these things? And kids are more anxious. And I think it's about us really just looking at all of that and saying, where do we need to just kind of reflect on life and slow down a little bit? And I do think play in childhood is a big one. Yeah.
No, definitely.
I really go.
No, I'm totally with you on that. And I can just really feel your energy and your passion and the message, really, because I think it is a really important one. And you touched on that we're born to play and we've got almost that intrinsic natural ability, isn't it? So when a child's got that inside, what are we doing as society to perhaps hold it back? And I can relate that a little bit to the pool and swimming, where babies are actually got this almost a natural affinity to water because of obviously being in utero. It's their home that they love. They've also got reflexes, the gag reflex, which is a breath hold survival reflex. They've got a little kick, a little amphibian, which will propel them through the water. And they've got the little grasp as well, the hold on. And what we're doing is we are sometimes then counteracting that by them holding them too tightly or giving them just too much help, or there might be a little bit too much force. So I think it's just almost that sort of like taking a step back, slowing down, and allowing the child to actually do more, because we have expectations, don't we? We want our children to succeed, but actually, are we giving them the right ingredients and the foundation for success? So if I was a parent listening to this, or a professional maybe on dry land and water, what could I say actually are the benefits? Because I think if we can talk in some sort of parent language and they almost like tap into the benefits, then maybe they'll value and appreciate play a little bit more. So how can we sort of unpack the benefits of play?
Absolutely. And I think, it's so cool because I think that adult agenda and play comes in so often. And I just want to kind of reflect quickly on play and what I call non-play, which I know gets people's backs up a little bit. But really, that play is spontaneous. It's intrinsically motivated by the child. It's freely chosen by them. There's enjoyment and it's process focused. And unfortunately, a lot that we see on social media, and I always say it's good to be inspired by it, but reflect on why you're inspired by that. How will that relate to your child? Is it a good match? Because I think copy-paste approaches can frustrate caregivers and children. But we really need to understand that if we setting up activities and we doing worksheets and we, even though it might be fun, it's not necessarily play. The moment an adult is directing the process, the moment an adult is looking for a certain outcome, it's no longer true play. So I think it's important for us to separate that in our minds and to know when are we playing and when is it activities, rather. So because I think that it changes how we support it as well, because that adult agenda and play is so strong, and absolutely we want the ones to learn. And I think I so often see, the ABCs, the 1, 2, 3s, and the colors come up so strongly. But play is a medium that achieves all of that. So really, when we're looking at learning and development, that's our foundations that are happening for our pre-literacy skills, our pre-numeracy skills. And I think we're so quick to jump to the literacy, numeracy, the academic skills that we forget about this critical foundation that's there, where our little ones are learning through 3D real life experiences, whole body sensory experiences. They need to tap into all their sensory systems, which a worksheet can't do for us. We really need all of that to truly develop our underlying sensory, gross, fine motor skills that build on that, and the learning will come. And again, I think we're very quick to always focus on what will help my child achieve the academic skills. Will play get them there? Play will get them there, and I'll give a little example now, but I also want to add in that play is also important for health and well-being. And there's so much focus on, okay, and then so if we do play, we will get to the ABCs, the 1, 2, 3s, and yes, but you'll also have a happier, regulated, just I think all round more lovely little human being, because we're also supporting their well-being. And I think that the world has been hectic, and it's still hectic, and there's so much going on. And our little ones hear things that grown-ups say when they're waiting in the grocery aisles, or TVs here and there. There's just so much going on, even now, again, at the moment. So I just feel like for them, again, it's a way to process the world and what's happening. And we're so quick to always just go to the ABCs. So that's just what I want to say. Is that really, if we look at play, it is all around for development, learning, health, and well-being. And they'll also learn their colors and their numbers. And I think, again, the adult agenda comes in. And an example I like to give is that when you choose to join in your child's play, And we don't always need adults involved in play for little ones to learn, but this is a question I always get. Try and keep it child-led. We're very quick to come in with 100 questions. What color is that? How many do you have? You know, to kind of check it off as they're playing. And unfortunately, when we come in with an adult agenda like that, we're sending a lot of messages to our little ones. We're sending messages of, your game is probably not good enough, so I'm changing it. We're interrupting their focus. So often they kind of forget where they were in the flow of their game. And I so often hear, you know, caregivers want little ones to play for longer, but we often as adults coming in and interrupting that focus and flow with the hundreds of questions. We forget little ones take longer to respond. They take longer to process information, and we're bombarding them on an auditory level where visually they're still very strong. So what I also always say, just sit back, and I love you said that earlier, observe, just take a step back. Your little one will still know the colors without you asking each one. And a simple thing is like, for example, if your little one is maybe playing with a farm, or there's like construction vehicles or something, and they want you to be a car, you could say, oh, I'd love the red one because red is my favorite color. And they'll pass you the red one, and then you can be like, yeah, they still know their color red, you know, without me having asked what's this color, what's this color, what's this color. So we can still respectfully, those things happen. And I think that's the point I want to make, is that we feel like we need to ask them 20 questions, but naturally through play, those things happen. Like, oof, those cookies you made were delicious. Could you maybe give me 3 more cookies? Oh, they can count to 3 and they can pass it on the plate to me. So play really is full of all these learning opportunities. If we can just take a step back and nurture what their interests are, because often they're learning something specific at the moment. We so often want to rush past it. Again, that's the foundation. That's where they need to be. They need to repeat certain things because that's what strengthens the motor programs. And again, we get bored as adults. We see them doing something for a third time, and we'll be like, okay, now you need to do something else. No, we want to strengthen those neural pathways, because that means they're firing faster and faster the more they do it. So be in that space, observe what their interests are, allow the repetition to happen, and be wary of that adult agenda, and for it not to really just completely hijack that whole beautiful experience. So that's just a few things that
really rich. What I was really interested in there, I was really picking up, as you say, the observe and the pause to play. And I think that's so lovely. And I think that was part that I really enjoyed about the book as well. There was a lot of reflective practice for myself as a professional, but also parents as well. So we're not just, as you say, on our agenda, we're actually tapping into our thoughts, and there's an opportunity to reflect and to write down throughout all the chapters, which is lovely. Here at Accents, we have a little bit of a pause, and we have a parent language where we say we wait, we watch, and we wonder, because that simply bringing that into the water is exactly right. That gives us that processing space, but also the time and space to really see where the child's at, what they're doing.
Exactly.
To just remind ourselves to stand.
Yeah.
But they really are. Definitely. And I notice as well that toys can almost sometimes are getting very sophisticated, aren't they? And quite complicated. So it's almost like, what are we providing our children in the environment? If a toy can do so much, or we're actually giving them something quite complex, we're taking away the opportunity to play. And if I can sort of relate that in the water, that sometimes, we are building the structure themselves, or we're building that puzzle for them themselves. Or we've got a toy that sprinkles, that plays music, that flashes, and it moves all on the same time. Actually, the child could be moving a lot more, could be making the noise, they could be catching the sprinkles. So I think it's the environment as well, that sensory rich environment, what we're actually being mindful, what we're adding in, and actually what we're not adding in, because quite often less is more. Oh, really?
So much more. So much more, absolutely. And I think there's been fascinating studies done on the amount of toys, and exactly what we're saying, less is more, because little ones can't process all of that. They get overwhelmed and they shut down and say, I don't know what to play. There's too many choices for me. And exactly what you're saying is that, again, and I love walking in the toy shops just to look at the boxes and what the boxes say. And I think, again, as a caregiver, you want the best for your little one. So when you see a toy marked as it does this and it's cognitive development and it's this, and you get to this level, and then again, I think a lot of those marketing tactics, it does pull towards some of that, where we then take it, and then we also kind of instruct little ones with, this is how you play with it, and not give them the opportunity to show us, because they're often much more creative than us. That's what I realized. They can come up with so many interesting and incredibly creative ideas. And the curiosity, we're taking that away by immediately saying, no, that's not how you play with it. This is what the box says. The flexible thinking, and to me, those are our 21st century skills that we're really wanting to nurture. And I think a lot of the times, either through the toy or through our instruction of how to play with things, we limit them so much, where, again, if we can step back, there's no wrong way to play. And I think that's what I really want caregivers to remember. There's no wrong way to play. It's often our definition as adults based on our play histories and what we believe is play and isn't play, that's been molded through years now, that we forget there's no wrong way to play. And it's fascinating that when we sit back and we watch a little one stacking things or pushing things over or throwing things, they're learning so many spatial concepts, or things about gravity or volume or mass, which is, again, our foundational skills. But we just want them to count, or to, can you do this or this or this? So I love what you're saying, because it is exactly that. It's about, I think, us not necessarily opting into maybe the brightest or the most expensive. Like, I think that kids can play with rocks and sticks. And I mean, I love what you're doing with your water play, and even how you've been explaining, interacting with a beautiful medium that is water, that children learn so much. I think we complicate things because we want it to be an educational moment, every moment, but we just need to see it through their eyes, which I think is quite important.
I think when we are in a pool environment, obviously there is that safety aspect, and we are empowering our parents for the child to sort of learn a sort of swim journey. So play can definitely be part, and when we're in a playful mode, then we're going to be relaxed more. As you said, there's going to be more like well-being benefits, and there's going to be that reciprocal joy. But we're more in a sort of like, there is a learning experience. So I think sometimes we struggle as parents and swim professionals to try to get that balance, to create a sort of a structure, so it doesn't like complete free play, because it's like, oh, why am I coming to this for half an hour and all I'm playing, so it's to get that balance, but to to really enjoy play as a professional, and to start with us. So we come into the session in a joyful, playful manner, but to actually impart that to our parents, if they can play and model with their child, as you say, the brain and body learns through experience. So if we are showing them how to kick, then to splash and kick the water and to really enjoy it, and then the child will be in that playful mode as well, rather than that formal swim lesson across backwards and forwards and kicking, and that's it.
Absolutely. And that's where the guided play, that space between free play and adult directed play, that's where I think that as adults, if we can get that dance right, and I can hear you already saying that dance, I love it. That's guided play is so powerful in that way. And affording, I think adults, it's hard for us not to have any control or structure. So I feel like that's a good balance between the child having autonomy and it still being child-led in terms of things that they find interesting in the moment, but with us adults having a little bit of a dance in that process, and it can be so beautiful. And I love what you're saying now about the playful mind. I think that's often that non-stressed frame of mind, which is so important to learn as well, because we've seen so much research that, when we're very stressed and our little ones, there are lots of studies of kids coming from impoverished areas, and just, I think, what stress does in so many ways. And a non-stressed frame of mind is so important for us to really link all of these beautiful things that we're experiencing and seeing, and then remembering it for next time. I just love it. I wish I could jump in the pool with you guys.
No, I think we're very fortunate, and it's not something that I take for granted, that the medium itself of water, how playful it is, and obviously multi-sensory. But it does regulate. It is a regulation. You can switch into
Yes.
a really nice blue mind, calm state. So if your brain is on that sort of overdrive, there is naturally less distractions. So, but then nature will give that as well. Just kicking the shoes off, going bare feet, and running through grass. And my childhood was very much, climbing trees, rolling down hills, just jumping in any parts of water, whether it's puddles, streams. So having that freedom, really. But I think we were very fortunate that our generation, our parents, actually just trusted. They trusted the process. There wasn't so much sort of focus and I think there was a lot of trust for children to have that freedom. I know the world has definitely changed now, but we could still bring in that element of trust. If the child hasn't had enough floor play opportunities and they are completely fixed and sitting, then we're not trusting the process. And the same in the pool. If we're taking those opportunities to move and we're fixing them again, we're just not trusting that process and bringing that play in, are we?
So true. So I'm really hoping these conversations, we can give some trust back in the process and trust back into childhood. I think it's so, so important, because we're really looking at who knows what the jobs of the future are going to be. And I think that's what we need to reflect on. So are we setting them up in terms of skills? I don't think reciting ABC 1, 2, 3, knowing all the colors, is that gonna, be the difference? I think we need to really look at it's almost like the world's becoming more specialist. And I feel that if we really trust in our little ones' intrinsic motivations, and we're more strength-based from the start, what is my child's interest? What are their strengths? What is their potential? I think it could be fascinating, instead of us always, I think, taking checklists and again, guided play is that space in between where we can, if our little ones are struggling a bit. But I do think it's that we forget about what is this little one's special package, what gift to the world, do they have? So
what are your top tips then to support parents and professionals with play and nurture as well through play?
So starting one, I think we've just said this word so many times: observe, observe, observe. I know it's hard for us as adults. That's where we can truly see what our little ones' true motivations and interests are. So often I say, it's the moments where they will say again. It's often moments where they want to persist with something, so they might get in trouble because they're doing things. And I always say, look at what were they doing in those moments? What actions did you see? What movements? Where a lot of repetition happens. What are their interests? What are they? And this is something you and I are also very passionate about. Their individual sensory preferences and needs. I think it's so important. We all have different sensory buckets. We have certain sensitivities. We have certain sensory systems that need more input. And again, a caregiver child, we might have very different sensory profiles. So we need to allow space for that, because they might only manage with a certain amount of input on a tactile level, but need more movement input. So I think be very respectful of your child's individual sensory needs and preferences, and then allowing space for the developmental stage where they're at. Nice. Allow that to happen. So I think really those three things, I think, will set you up for a more child-led approach. And then just really trying to limit the adult attender as much as you can, and rather, like that little examples I was giving, instead of you asking a million questions, how can you enter into that play environment and keep the script, keep it there, but support the flow of their play. So I think that we need to stand back first. and it's hard. I say that, but it can be hard. And then certainly I am very aware, and this is something I talk about a lot, is that on-board space. It's difficult. Some children aren't used to it. Some children have been entertained. They've been going activity. I always say that there's some children who struggle to transcend that on-board space. And I just want to remind caregivers that just like we have gross motor development and fine motor development, and some children are the more sporty kids, and some kids are better at drawing and coloring, play is a muscle and play is a skill that improves with time and practice. We're all born with a different capacity for playfulness. And the interesting thing is that our capacity can remain stable across a lifetime unless we specifically work on that. So again, play is a skill. We have some kids who, the moment grown-ups say go play, they're away and they've got so many ideas. And then you can see there's some kids who are a little bit uncomfortable and they need more support. And I think reflect on where your little one is as well. Some children need a little bit more support, a little bit more of a dance to help them build their capacity. Don't expect, maybe even in your family that all siblings will be the same and they all have this inherent playfulness. There are differences with that. So some children might need what I call a little bit of a here and near dance, where we often talk about independent play. And I think that sometimes that, we think it's far away, but it's not. Independent play can happen next to you as well, but it's about independent choice in play. And I think that some kids just need that proximity of a caregiver to feel safe and connected, to know that I can play. So think about where your play space is. If it's far, on the other side, some children might not be comfortable with that. Maybe start closer and increase the time engaged. So I think there's a lot that we need to reflect on, but if we start child first, I think we'll know which strategies are most suited to your little one.
Yeah, no, I love the way that, as you say, I really believe in sensory preferences, and as you say, meeting children where they're at, because I think sometimes when we think of the senses, which we know is very important, it's how we learn about our world, but they're not static. Our thresholds aren't static.
Mm-hmm.
If we reflect ourselves as adults, how much energy do we have at the start of the day, and how much, how do we feel, and what sensory environment do we want at the end of the day?
Yes.
Something slightly different for our buckets, and need to be a bit quieter or a bit slower.
Yeah, because the auditory bucket's filled up for the day.
We don't often think the children do, though, and actually they have more sleep, and they have time where they need to sort of regulate themselves. So if we're having a swim lesson just before their nap, then to think that possibly they're going to need less sensory stimulation than if they'd had their nap and then they're ready to go, or whether they've just got some developmental stages. We're seeing a lot of difference when a child has been crawling and pulling up and then they're suddenly walking. The differences in the pull is huge. They've suddenly got a completely different body to work with, and they can sometimes kick more, or actually they've forgotten because they're so used to walking now that they're less. It adds in different dynamics, really. So I think, as you say, it's just watching where the child's at that particular week, that particular day, that particular developmental stage, and going with it.
Don't rush it. It's not a race. And I hope that we'll also get to that point, that we're not rushing and past this childhood in preparation for adulthood. Just trust in the process.
Yeah, definitely. There's been a bit of a talk about milestones at the moment, and it hasn't sort of come through to the UK as much. It's very much directed from the US at the moment, but there does seem to be a lot of awareness and fixed on milestones, and I think sometimes we can get a little bit sort of stressed about whether or not our children are meeting their milestones, and again, not necessarily looking and reflecting, well, what are we doing? What environment are we, how are we nurturing?
Exactly.
What are we creating a sensory rich environment? So, you know, knowing milestones are there and important, but actually not forgetting to reflect on the environment that we're presenting, so they will actually, you know, meet their milestones. Because it's almost,
and they can go through that,
have a focus on where possibly a child should be, but not actually providing, you know, the best ingredients really, and almost saying, well, they need to be reading when they go to school, or at least writing their name, or recognizing this and that, and having these fixed dimensions, but then not having, you know, the success to meet all of their milestones. It's almost a bit of an upside down.
It is, and I can't see, like, my heart goes out to caregivers because it is so difficult. I mean, even this period with the CDC milestones, I mean, it was everywhere the whole time, and even I got it, and I was like, okay, because it just puts that stress there, and I think that unfortunately, then, you know, we're seeing little ones who, like, if we use the name example, who just tracing names, but then we skip the things with, like, the mark making that's so important for eye hand coordination. And I think that's the thing, is that when we skip all those things, we're taking away the very ingredients they need to get to name writing, to get to reading. So we're pushing this very superficial aspect of it, and then the foundation isn't there. And that's always just what breaks my heart, is that, you know, then we have these little ones sitting in school, and I think in the book I also talk about it, you know, those skills are then on toothpicks, and the stress and the anxiety that they feel because the foundation isn't there, and the confidence, you know, in themselves, because they weren't actually given the opportunity to be curious and explore and discover things. And I think that aspect of play builds little one's confidence so much as well. And I think it's such an important aspect of learning, is that confidence in ourselves. Because learning is a bit uncomfortable. I think as adults, whenever we have to learn something new, I think, you know, whenever the website updates and I have to work out a new thing, and I'm like, no, I just worked out how to do that other thing. Wow, you know, why did they change it? And we forget sometimes as adults how uncomfortable learning in that environment can feel. And I think if we can have little ones also just feeling confident in themselves, wow, just an openness to learning, isn't it?
I think sometimes we just, as adults, we overcomplicate things. You know, when we think about the foundations of what the brain and body needs, it's quite simple: movement, lots of touch, and lots of love. And if we have the basics ingredients, you know, and we try to sort of almost like top load all the higher levels, and we don't have that house structure at the bottom. And we're going to be talking some more as well, aren't we? We have got, or you have got a fantastic conference that I would love to share to our communities. Can you tell me a little bit more about that?
Yes, I'm so excited, and Joyce will be one of our wonderful speakers. But it is called the Play Beyond 5 Summit. It's the 14th to the 17th of July this year. And really with the focus of play's importance as a foundation in early childhood. So although it's Play Beyond 5, it really speaks to why play is so important in those early years to play, and how that builds into childhood, school-going age, adolescence, adulthood. And there's going to be something for you as well as an adult, and really looking at the benefit of play in our lives. So it's a celebration of play in childhood, our play as caregivers, and the beautiful benefits that play can have for our own health, well-being, and development all across the board. So very excited. I think we're going to look at play holistically. Like I said, very excited to have Joe as one of our speakers. So keep an eye out on our social media platforms. So we're building towards that. Still a bit of work to put into it, but we're very excited.
Yeah, so it's all online, isn't it? So it can be accessed anywhere in the world, and during the conference, and there's going to be opportunities if people miss it, and then they can get the link. So I'll keep posting it as well on my channels. So if anybody is listening, not quite sure, then just post away, and I will signpost you to that. So that's great. Well, thank you so much. It's been so lovely to chat. And you know, again, just to sort of bring play to everybody's points really, and all the benefits. So as a society, we can really enjoy play, and for all the all the value it takes.
Absolutely. And thank you so much, Jai. I always could talk to you, and I can talk about play all day. So thank you so much. And if there's anyone who wants to reach out or learn more, I'm sure all my tags will be there. But yeah, thank you so much.
I will tag you in, and I will signpost. So if anybody would like to, and I really recommend your book, I'll tag that in.
Thank you.
It's great, actually. I think it's really super for parents, but for professionals as well. There are so many brilliant links in there, and as you can see, I've sort of put my page markers as well.
I love that. Love that.
For early years educators, there's lots and lots of really useful research and links. So thank you so much for bringing that to the world.
Thank you. Oh, amazing.